Our thoughts, feelings and behaviours are all connected in some way, and they will affect each other quite drastically, whether that's positive or negative ones. The thing is, when we think of negative thoughts, which I get many of them, what we need to do is actually check in on them. So we need to take that little moment of break and to check in on how we're feeling about that. So the way we can do this is by stopping and checking, observing them, and try and make them better. Lots of people will think, oh, a negative thought, and try anything to get their mind off it. And yes, there's times where I do this, but your best bet is to be able to view it and try and change it into a positive. The way we can do this is, for example, for me, so one of the most stressing jobs I've had to deal with was a 3.5-week-old decomposed body. There was lots of unpleasant things about it, such as there was a hole in the bloke's neck, there was maggots everywhere, the smell was disgusting, and it just wasn't pleasant, and it really shook me to the core because there was so much alcohol bottles, empty ones, around, and I couldn't help but feel like that linked with my dad's passing. Unfortunately, he was left for a certain amount of hours where, you know, he had unfortunately passed away, and I couldn't tell you the exact moment he passed away and was found, but you know, I kept reflecting upon this body, and I couldn't stop thinking about my dad because of this alcohol. And you know, this guy was lonely, and I kept picturing it as my dad because I knew he was lonely. But the way I can get past that, and it took me a long time to try and figure it out, the way I try and get past that is try and make this negative thought into a positive one. So I'll picture the most scariest bit of the scene where there's plenty of maggots around this person's body, and I'll try and picture the maggots as in when I used to go fishing with my father or my brother, we would use maggots, and I would picture the maggots into a happy thought, and you know, casting out the rod, trying to catch some fish and having a little bit of a laugh, and most of the time we were unsuccessful, but you know, for those few hours, it was brilliant. Like, you could have the conversations, you can really bond with your family, and I was trying to picture this distressing scene into making it a positive one. And then another thing I can relate it to is, yeah, the empty alcohol bottles. And, you know, like, yes, it's very hard to distinguish that with my father, but I had good times with him. So whenever I try and picture the alcohol bottles, I'd picture it sometimes alongside my dad, and you know, I'd picture him with a drink on holiday, for example, and we were doing these fun activities. So try and focus on the positives. Another thing about it is that the smell was so revolting, and there's quite a few smells around here that, like, you know, that do trigger me, such as like a wheelie bin, or you know, the smell of decomposing manure, or something along those lines. And I just picture it to, oh, I remember the smell of the bodily fluids, and I try and picture it against a farm, because a farm sort of smell sort of kind of reminds me sometimes of the situation. And then I remember when I used to have these farm parties around one of my, you know, best friends, and we used to have great nights sort of thing, where we would all be together and socialising and just having fun. And you know, it does help me sleep sometimes, because you know, I'll be in my sleep, and then I'll suddenly have this distressing thought come up, and then I'll say, the way I can calm myself down is go, right, remember these positive thoughts, and then instead of having this dark, horrible image, you try and see the light out of it, and you're like, actually, it could have been worse, you know, like, and you try and make light out of it, and you try and have a little bit, I don't want to say fun, but you try and picture something positive, and it's a way you can work your mind to distract yourself, and it's great. So that we can build societal acceptance for one another, we have to share this information. We have to allow people to understand that there is a serious mental health issue within the world. Lots of people feel like they're on their own, and they just trying to, you know, get to a point where they're happy and safe, but they can't because they don't know how to process information. This is why I'm trying to show you in these videos that, yes, it goes against everything in terms of, in my mind sometimes, that if you focus on a negative, how on earth can you make that into a positive? But you can, because it's like, picture yourself breaking a bone. Or pulling your hamstring or something, and because of a mistake that you've done on a football pitch or a treadmill, whatever it may be. But you learn how to overcome that and adapt and to, you know, heal, and to make sure you don't make that same mistake again, or that unfortunate situation you found yourself in. You can try and, you know, like, avoid the negative of it. Making a negative into a positive is vital, and to be able to view that negative and clench it by its, you know, collar and just go, right, what was the positives of that? What can I view that image as now? So for example, if you have a nightmare and there's a devil, what's around the devil? Is there any, you know, is there a fire around the devil? Then picture the fire and go, what does that remind me of? Oh, hang on a minute, that reminds me of a campfire around friends and socialising, or, you know, a fire in a fireplace, keeping you nice and warm in the cold winters. And then you think, oh, cold winter, Christmas time, family time, and hot chocolates or mulled wine, whatever it may be. And you can try and picture it. Whenever that demon, devil comes up, then you can go, oh, I now relate that to a fire. I would now relate that to Christmas time. And trust me, as you process it, repetition comes in, and eventually that negative, oh, that doesn't disturb me anymore. I promise you it will work, or at least help you to get to a place where you're back on track.